Well, good morning, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to Mornings with the Mayor on an absolutely spectacular, clear day. Put your sunscreen on today. It's going to be warm. It's supposed to be 100 degrees tomorrow, which means, you know, there's 3 days of sun, 4 days of fog. So if you do the math, it's probably going to be cool on the 4th of July. That's just a prediction. Good. So again, 4th of July parade starts at 9 a.m. And again, no chairs until 6 p.m. Otherwise, the chief's going to be out there enforcing the chair wars. But welcome to Danville. We're meeting here again for the second time in our newly renovated and expanded Veterans Hall and Senior Center. I'm Newell Arnerich, Mayor of Danville this year, and we're going to have a really fun discussion. A lot of people don't like to talk about numbers, but we're going to talk about numbers because, in fact, it's what, we do a general plan, and the general plan says, here's what we're going to look like, and then you have to implement that. And our budget that we do every year, and we're going to talk about two aspects of that budget, that's how you implement what you look like. It's kind of like when you want to buy a suit. You got to have a budget. So we have a budget to create that, how Danville's going to look for this year going forward. And we're going to talk about how we look out 10 years. It's actually one of the unique things that we budget for 10 years out. And so when you buy that suit today, you need to know what it's going to look like, because you got to clean it, you got to press it, you got to keep it looking Danville standard. And what's that implication 10 years out? And that's a difficult lesson. Government doesn't want to look that far ahead. And the reason why is they don't usually want to know what that answer is. In our case, we fortunately had a discipline and really under the leadership of our town manager, Joe Calabrigo. We have to. And we'll tell a little story about why we have to, because we're kind of unique based on the limited revenues that we have. And so I'd like to take just a moment, go around the table today, and introduce, and I'm going to tell you a little story about La Boulange, who has provided some refreshments for us this morning. So why don't we start table over here?
Don Reed, longtime resident.
Ray Bishop, resident.
Jean Reed, resident.
Kim Holmes, resident.
Gary Lee with American Bank.
Karen Stepper, Town Council.
Jessica Lipsky, Danville Express.
Robert Storr, Vice Mayor.
Nat's behind the camera. I'm Monty Aurelius of Discover Danville Association.
And a resident.
And a resident.
Marcia Harmon, resident and Discover Danville Association.
Gail Israel with Supervisor Candace Anderson.
I'm Matt Stavey. I'm with the San Ramon Valley Fire Protection District on the Board of Directors representing you.
I'm Paige Meyer, the new fire chief for the district.
Steve Simpkins for police chief.
Bob, resident.
I'm Emlyn Struthers. I'm with Senator Mark DeSaulnier's office, and I also went to San Ramon Valley High School back in the day.
Wolves.
Very cool.
Ken Mittens, resident with AT&T and on the school board.
Gail Larson, and I work for Assemblymember Buchanan.
Elizabeth Hudson, I'm the finance director for the town.
I'm Joe Calabrigo, longtime resident and town manager.
Great, and a gentleman just came in. Welcome. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Pei Shu Zheng, living in Danville.
Very good.
Perfect.
Welcome. So what we're going to do, we're going to spend about 35 minutes, maybe 40 minutes tops, to kind of go through what we're going to talk about, as I introduced in the beginning, about what we've done to create that look for this year and how our budgets are going. And then we're going to go around the room, and for those of you that like, and we'd like to hear particularly from new Chief Myers here, about what's all the exciting things. Discover Danville, and anybody around the table who would like to share what's happening in your part of the world. So the budgets, the state of California goes through pretty much an annual budget, and that's how they approach the world. And in local government, we do 2-year budgets. And the 2-year budgets, the state's sort of supposed to do that, but it ends up being a year-to-year budget. So we spend a lot of time to create a 2-year budget. And then what we do is in the second year of that 2-year cycle, we do what's called a budget update. To see, was our forecast accurate? Are we on track to accomplish the things we want? And also, not to keep picking on the state, but the truthfulness is to find out what we have lost in that 2-year period. And that's still happening for a variety of reasons. But we are where we are, and in Danville's case, that we've set aside, we have a 40% reserve against our general fund. And somebody says, well, that's a high percentage. Well, you know what, it used to be, if you didn't have one, you were criticized. Now, when we have one, that's 40%. And there are other cities that are that way too. We're probably, relative to our size of our budget, our per capita spending is related to our per capita income. And ours is about half of what our neighbors are. Now, we would take credit, well, we're good at managing it, but the fact is we have to, because our revenues are less. So we have to use creative ways to develop methodologies and implementation measures to use those very limited dollars in the best way we can. So if you had a budget of, $100 and your neighbor has $200, they're gonna do a lot more than you are. But in Danville's case, and I think most of us agree, we look pretty good. We have very high service standards. Our residents, and those of you that all live here, expect us to do things well. And we have this image as though we have great resources. But not unlike our school district, we're the low wealth district. Now that's the oxymoron. There's a high per capita income, but yet in how the tax share and revenue base is done, Danville gets very little of that. So we've had to be really cautious. So hence, when I said in the beginning, we look at a 10-year budget, that we have to do that, because you have to see that ripple effect. So if we spend $1 today on capital, that's a one-time expense. However, there's a maintenance cost to this. So how does that maintenance cost? And over time, that's going to escalate. It's going to increase. So when we build lots of facilities, which we pretty well have accomplished, all the things that we've set out over the past 30 years in terms of major projects we have done. So we're pretty much, for the next probably decade, in the process of maintaining what we have, figuring out how to use it in the most cost-effective way, and how to enhance that use. And the reason why I say I think we're really built out, if you look at our population, and we've mentioned this before, in California, the population from 2001 to 2012 grew just under 11%. And here in Contra Costa County, it grew about 9%. So we were actually a little behind the state. But in Danville, statistically, we didn't grow. So if you can go online, look it up on your phone right now. You can look at the population in 2000 census and look at the 2010 census. And you look at it first, you say, well, it's the same number. Well, that's because it only varied about 260 to 300, depending on where you look it up. And what that says is we're built out. So we are who we are. We're changing demographics. We're aging a little different. The classification of the 40 to, or let's say 45 and over, got a little larger, and a little different than San Ramon, which actually had some age that has dropped because the influx of fairly young folks out in Doherty Valley. So our job as your elected leaders and policymakers is how to manage those resources. And why would you have 40% reserve? Well, think about this, that we are going to have an earthquake on the Calaveras Fault, which kind of runs on the west side of Danville through the hills, jumps over in fragments in kind of a stair-stepping effect going towards Mount Diablo and then off towards Walnut Creek. The magnitude of that is going to be 7 point something. That's the maximum based on the calculation. And if that happens, there will be freeway overpasses that will not be habitable, that you will not be able to cross those. There will be damage that we're in, along with the fire department, our first responders. We will be responsible. That means in order to get the equipment that we need, to get road moving equipment, all of that, we will have to write checks. So we have a system in place to be able to respond and do that. You can't go to the bank, maybe Co-America would like to do it. By the way, today we just had an earthquake. Could you give us a credit line for $10 million instantly? Well, that's gonna take time. So, doing things like that and then watching what's happened at the state level and how the state government has come after local government at all levels. Virtually nobody's untouched. the fire department, our school districts. All the special districts have all been impacted by that. So it's prudent in our case to do that. And again, because we don't have those excess funds every year, and our revenues are more stable. Overall picture, we tightened our belt through our budget process over the past 4 years, like everybody, actually really going back 5 years. The good news is that I think we have managed in our partnerships with Discover Danville, the Chamber of Commerce, and now touching our businesses and trying to do it in a way to really make a difference. When we invested in 2009 in helping retail businesses, where we offered an incentive program, and this came out of our general fund to help redo those businesses, their facades and things like that. Well, somebody says, well, what are the benchmarks? How do you measure that? Well, in 2007, our retail sales tax peaked. In fact, it peaked just about everywhere in the United States. And by 2009, in January, it dropped. Now, in some parts of Contra Costa County, it dropped 40%. Well, we didn't have that type of impact. We didn't have the car dealerships. We didn't have those big boxes that had dramatic changes. Ours are mostly small businesses. For example, today we are enjoying some refreshments from La Boulange. La Boulange, back at the beginning of the economy, created the beginning of the Great Recession in 2009, decided to do an expansion plan. Now, who would do an expansion plan in a really rapidly downturn economy? Well, they did. They opened here in Danville a store. And overnight, when you looked at the people, I stopped by there almost every day or one of the other places to have a cup of coffee. And interesting, it was new people. So out of a marketplace, in a bad economy, they figured out how to draw out people because they had a different concept. And here we are now, 4 years later, and that company, which was a locally owned, it originally was started in San Francisco. And it was actually started by the gentleman that owns lots of pasta. His family owned it. And when his parents kind of retired and passed away, he took it over and ran it till the 1990s. And a gentleman in Lafayette named Pascal, and it's not Pascal's as in Pascal's restaurant, took it over and is a really dedicated baker. And then recently, as you know, Starbucks bought that, and it's becoming a nationwide chain. So interesting how in unique places, in a town like Danville, our economy is not based on national brands, it's based on small businesses. And that's very unique. So you don't have that momentum, and it takes a different way to help create success in an environment made up of small entities. Marcia Harmon knows this better than anybody. When you own a small company, you do the cleaning, the bookkeeping, the stocking, the ordering, the customer service, the customer complaints, the special events, and everything. And generally, that's probably 1 or 2 people. So I think we're really fortunate. The council and our staff are committed to making a difference and helping. So in a long story, our sales tax last year of the first quarter of 2012 exceeded our 2007. And the first quarter of this year has exceeded that. So we're not only better than we were in 2007, we've twice exceeded that. That has happened virtually nowhere in Contra Costa County. And I don't know about others because I haven't looked at it. So we're pretty unique, and again, because we have to manage the small things. You know, in large organizations where you have more money than you need, you manage big ideas and it works itself out. In a small organization with a small revenue, every decision counts. So the council has spent most of the month of April and into May looking at our budget. And we go through each department. What are the changes? What are the goals? And when you look back in the history of Danville, our staff in the 1990s was much greater than it was today, yet our population has increased by about 30-something%. One, we're more efficient. In our community, given our limited resources, embracing technology is absolutely the best thing. Anything that we can get online to make it easier for you to do business, to do permitting. And there's an exciting new app that's gonna come out. And it's in the work. The council's been testing this with our staff. Our IT department is our growth department. So as IT grows, we have to tighten up our other departments. That's the way it is. We don't have the luxury of saying, well, IT needs more people, let's hire more people. We've got to, on each step of the way, make sure we're completely balanced. And that's the world that we live in. And I think we've had a culture on our council for the past, really probably the past 15 to 18 years, where we all bought into that. And as our new council members come in, we all have our exciting ideas, but the one discipline that we've all learned is how to approach the budget process. We're very realistic. We budget conservatively. And what does budgeting conservatively mean? It means that if you think you're going to get X revenues, and that's an optimistic point of view, we're gonna be a little pessimistic about that. And we have to, because we cannot run short. And if the chief has 30 sworn officers and we said, sorry, we missed it on the budget, could you get rid of 2 of those guys? We can't do that. That's not responsible. So we've taken an approach, and it always takes each person that comes on a little while to learn that. Because you want to be able to achieve a long list of things, and we have a backlog of things that are buried in our capital improvements. We don't do anything in Danville by debt. So the town itself has no debt. So to do this building, we had to save the funds. We had to look for some grants. When we go to pave our streets, and streets are one of our biggest challenges. And you may have heard about Orinda, one of, a smaller city, population, I think about 12,000 people. Their single biggest challenge is their infrastructure. And cities, going forward, now have to account for virtually everything. Government will become more transparent because of new government accounting standards. And those standards say that the cost, the deferred maintenance of your roads must be put on your books. And how do you do that? So there's a measurement system that's called a PCI, Pavement Construction Index. And what it does is it rates your roads. And the goal is to stay over a 70 PCI. 100 would be a brand new road, for example. And in order for Danville to keep up with that, we now have to spend $3 million a year. Out of the general fund, that's about $18, $19 million. That's a lot of money. So public safety is our #1 expense, and will be. That's part of the value of what people expect in our community. We have our chief and all of our officers take great personal pride in wanting this to be absolutely the safest place, and they do catch bad guys. They'll chase them, as we said before, all the way to Los Angeles, chase them to Florida. They'll chase them to Orinda through the Caldecott Tunnel. You know what? We value that, so we put efforts into our detectives. So our closure rates are 4 to 5 times better than the county, and nationwide probably about 8 times better. So to do that, that's a value. So when we create that budget, the budget represents that value system. But we have to pay for that. So that's our challenges. When we go through the budget process, I will confess to you, there are more people in the room now than on the day that we approved the budget. But I guarantee you that if we didn't do the job that I believe that we have done, and you can remember Danville in '93, '94, we were on national news. Those were not happy times. I was not on the council. But the point I'm making was, we were not in the position with a shared value of everybody being on the same page about how to manage our resources. Joe really came into a leadership position, and we began to build a base of how do we do this, that we are not going to repeat what happened in the past. We are going to manage everything carefully. So while we have all that enthusiasm when the new member comes on board, our new staff, we always have to say, here's the Danville way of doing things. And that's something we have to repeat to ourselves. It's easy to want to please somebody and say, yeah, I'll repave your street. Well, to do $3 million a year is not sustainable for our budget. But it's the algorithm that's used in calculating pavement indexes. It basically says it's an exponential problem. So in Orinda's case, where they can't fund the amount that they need to. So if they're putting in $1 million a year now, and they should be putting 2, the problem is it's not just say, oh, well, next year I'll do 3 and I'll make it up. It's so fast in the decay that you can't catch up to that. So we're making an effort over the next few years here, particularly to get all of our old infrastructure back up to a higher level. And again, then we'll get back to a plateau and a plane that we can manage well. So really, on behalf of the council members, our vice mayor is here, and Karen Stepper, you know, we've been through this now enough times to know what that discipline has taught us, how to approach that. In our capital account, when somebody says, wow, you've got money in the bank, well, in order to build this building, which costs, say, a round number of $8 million, that took about 8-9 years to save that. So each year we put away a little bit of money. So we do have money in the bank because we have to save that. And if we started borrowing money, to me, that's a sign, if we had to do that, that we don't have enough revenues. So the services that we need today, if we're borrowing dollars to pay for those, that means you're gonna have people in the future pay for those services that they didn't get. And you know, that's a statewide issue. It's how do you balance that? So we're really excited and proud of how we have gotten to our budget. The good news was this year we didn't see the same severity of takeaways from the state level. There are things that are happening there in bills. There are mandates that come out. So whether the state takes money directly away from us, as they've been doing since 1992, 93, when they pass legislation and say, you're gonna do this, all of a sudden they're creating an expense for us. So that we have to fight. I've spent, in the past week and a half, I think I've been in Sacramento on 5 days, and sometimes going to 3 or 4 or 5 bills. This is the time of year where all the bills are rushing through. And we're trying to find those and support or speak against about the implications of a bill that's gonna hurt us. When you hear about things happening in the state, you know, it's important that all of us, if you think it's wrong, call one of us. You know, on Mondays, our staff, we get copies of everything that's happening. The League of California Cities tell us the ones that are going to affect us. And when you have about 700 bills in each house, 1,400 bills, it's a lot of legislation. And our job is to try to find those ones that are going to affect us. But what really helps, whether it be Assemblymember Joan Buchanan or Senator Mark DeSaulnier, they need to hear from all of us. You know, it does help. They kind of post who's for and against, and it's kind of a scorecard. And that's the pulse that they read about what people think about these. And not necessarily that our local electeds are the ones that are pushing those, but there are people that have different values and different ideas. So I would like to just point out a couple of things before I turn this over to Joe. Joe's going to kind of highlight budget. There are 2 documents here that are really great synopsis. The budget in brief really tells you about the categories, where the money comes from, how we're spending it, and then what, obviously we like to see programs and things. This is the brick and mortar, so the capital improvement program. And there are 3 really cool projects that are highlighted. And my favorite, and I'm sure it's the favorite of everybody, is to fix up north end of town. So that's between Linda Mesa and the high school. That's the part of Danville that doesn't look like Danville. The buildings are older, not up to the same standard. The streets are kind of wavy, don't have the sidewalks, the street trees. We have finally gotten to the point after, from my lifetime, 24 years of trying to acquire the right-of-ways to be able to do all the street improvements and create that old town look. And really pleased that the council was successful and our staff is successful in negotiating those. The project's been designed, it's getting ready to go out to bid, and then you're gonna see the utilities being relocated. Anything that's left there, anything above ground goes below, but there's a lot of realignment. The trees will come in, it'll have that quality at night. And the really exciting thing, right behind it, we're going to look at changing, on a temporary basis, the zoning standards there to encourage some reinvestment. And we have 5 to 6 properties that people are looking at buying and turning over to try to reinvest in those. And we want to take advantage of all the capital we're putting in there to make that look like Danville, is to create an incentive now is to get somebody to come in and redo those buildings. And, you know, that's what we did some years ago where Trader Joe's is in that shopping center. You know, people that come here now, yeah, it's a shopping center. Well, actually, it used to be a dirt lot, some old buildings, about half of what's there. An old shack that the town owned, and there was an electrical company there. It really wasn't what it is today. And no different here in Prospect, where we are today. It takes that type of investment. So we're really excited about this. So, you know, take a look at these. If somebody else wants to look at it, these will be posted online in PDFs. You can print these. But it really kind of gives you a little synopsis about what we're doing here in Danville. So with that, I'd really like to, we're going to go to Joe, and then Elizabeth Hudson is going to talk a little bit about that look. I can see that look. I've already done this. You know, they've spent 6 months getting it all in order and making the tweaks and changes and stuff and helping balance that. So really, this is the day to have fun. We're real lighthearted about how we got here and what are the highlights of that. Joe?
Okay, well, thanks. Thank you, Newell. So, you know, I appreciated your analogy a little bit earlier about looking forward 10 years with our revenue and expenditure forecasts and likening it to, you know, buying a new suit. I think it's a reference to the fact that I don't shop for clothes very often, but that's okay. And thank you, Nat, because now I'm actually able to see again. So Elizabeth is our finance director, and I think I'm probably going to cover most of the rest of what we're going to talk about this morning. Give her a break because she's actually been working nonstop for the last several months as we've worked through this budget process that just culminated earlier this month on the 4th when the council voted to adopt the budget for 2013 and 14. And you know, I have to say that over the past several years, the budget process has gone from something that we go through once a year for a 2 or a 3 month period of time to being something that we deal with virtually nonstop throughout the course of the year. And the reason for that is very simple, especially in light of a new economy and the need for us to be able to adjust to that new economy. We've sort of adopted a strategy that says that we've got to be able to prioritize based on what our community needs are, and then we've got to be able to constantly monitor what's going on so that we can react quickly depending upon whether we're dealing with a situation that we might perceive as a liability or a need for a sudden change, or for that matter, an opportunity to be able to take advantage of something that might come our way. I think that the town of Danville is, well, let me start by taking a step back and tell you that when this town incorporated back in 1982, it incorporated driven largely by what was referred to at the time as the 4 Ps. And the 4 Ps were police, parks, planning, and public works. Those were the 4 areas where the members of this community felt like we could be doing a better job than what was happening here locally at the time. And the incorporation effort was successful, and off we went. And it's interesting, and I like to note for folks that if you were to go through our budget and our finances and look at the way our expenditures are prioritized for 2013 and 14, over 80% of the town's expenditures are still focused into what could be characterized as those 4 areas. And the reason is very simple. Those priorities, as far as this community are concerned, haven't changed. And that's where the effort continues to be focused. Public safety, of course, is everyone's first priority. You look at the 485 cities in the state of California, and I challenge you to find one that doesn't have public safety as its top priority. So we have that in common with all other public agencies. The rest of our priorities, we talk about maintaining community appearance, which is another way of saying that we want to make sure that we're doing a good job of maintaining our parks, our roadsides, and all of our public facilities that add so much to our quality of life here in this community. There's a big emphasis in Danville on making sure that we maintain planning standards that allow this community to retain its unique small town character and history. So that's a priority. One of our priorities is to make sure that we offer enrichment and recreation opportunities for all segments of this community, from our children, our teens, our adults, to our active adults and our seniors. Another priority is to promote our economic growth and vitality. So the mayor spoke of that. We work very hard with our partners, the Chamber, Discover Danville, toward promoting our businesses here locally, but most recently over the last few years also within within our sub-region, the Tri-Valley, Contra Costa County, the East Bay. Let's see, what else? And then of course we focus a great deal on community events and celebrations that bring the entire community together in order to celebrate who we are. You know, in Danville, we think that our approach to doing things is a little bit different than it is in most other places. There was a city manager, I'd like to call him a colleague of mine, and I suppose he is because he's back in the management business now, a fellow by the name of Ted Gabler, who wrote a book 20 years ago, and it was called Reinventing Government. And one of the things that came out of this book, a quote that I won't get exactly right, but I don't forget the essence of it. Gabler wrote that the role of cities is not to provide all services, but to see that they're provided. And so, taking a page out of Ted's book, Danville's philosophy has always been to pull together all of the resources that are available to the community in order to see that our residents are served. So what does that mean? Well, we've got an operating budget here that we're very proud of. There was a lot of time and effort went into it. It's 300 pages long, and we're happy to provide copies, or you can access it on our website, and you can read the whole thing. But the essence is that there are 42 different programs, 6 different departments. We provide a broad range of services through your town government. But the way that we do that is a little bit different. And this has been consistent year over year. About 37% of our expenditures, operating expenditures, are allocated to paying for a small dedicated workforce of town employees. And the other 63% is allocated for hard costs and contracted and privatized services. If you look at other cities, you'll see that there's a much higher percentage of their total costs that are allocated towards staffing than what Danville does. Well, why do we do it that way? Well, we think that it's to our taxpayers' advantage to contract for certain services where it makes sense, and also to work with our partners within the community. The partnership that the town has with the school district, for example, where we work together to provide certain facilities, and then we provide maintenance that's associated with some of our school sites so that they can be used as school parks. Same thing with the gymnasiums that have been built at our 3 middle schools and the pools that are built at our 2 high schools. We've partnered with the district on those facilities, and our staff is off right now enjoying that brand new pool at San Ramon Valley High School, teaching swim lessons to all of those kids. So we think that we have a little bit of a different way of doing things, different approach to things. We do face some challenges, like all cities do. One of the challenges that we face is dealing with the constantly changing landscape of what goes on up in Sacramento. Chris McKenzie, who's the executive director of the League of California Cities, has shared with us the fact that over the last 35 years, since Prop 13 was passed in 1978, the state of California, either legislatively through the budget process or through our voters, has changed the rules of the game with respect to finance something like 30 times. And cities have to continue to adapt and change as that happens. And I think Danville has been very successful at doing that. I'm not actually going to go through and run through all of the numbers that are included in these 4-page summaries in great detail, because I think that you can read this information on your own and do that. But there are a few things that I do want to highlight. You know, the mayor and the town council pay me to be a little bit more to look at the pessimistic side of the equation and plan for the worst case. So what I will tell you is that as we move into 2013-14, what we see is that revenues, especially along the lines of our property tax and our sales tax, are continuing to recover from the effects of the recession. Danville has been very fortunate in comparison to other communities with respect to the way that our revenues have been impacted. And I think that that's for 3 reasons. One is that we were not going into the recession terribly dependent upon growth. You saw a lot of cities in Contra Costa County where there was rapid growth going on, a lot of revenue that was being generated from development-driven fees, and a tendency to rely on those development-driven fees to help operate your whole town government. Those cities were hurt a lot worse. Our growth, of course, were largely built out. We weren't dependent on growth going into the recession. We're not dependent on growth coming out of it. Second thing is that our property tax revenues were not hurt nearly as badly as they were in other communities throughout Contra Costa County. Our property tax revenues dropped by something like 7%, from a high of about 11.6 million down to less than 11, and going back now into 13-14, we're looking at property tax revenues in the range of 11.3 million. And then the third thing is that the town does not have any liabilities that are associated with employee pensions or other post-employment benefits. And what that means simply is that our employees are not part of a defined benefit pension plan like CalPERS. Our employees receive a 401 pension. They're not in Social Security. We offer no retirement medical, so we don't have to shoulder that burden that a lot of cities are having to deal with. So for those reasons, I think we were affected much less than most cities. Now, I will tell you, having said that as we head into 2013-14, our revenues are still not back to where they were at the high point in 2007 and 8. So here we are 6 years later. Now, what does that mean? Well, it's really simple. You know, when your revenues increase, your expenditures can increase, and if they don't, they can't. It's just that simple. Our council's priorities have always been fund operating, but they also want to be able to put dollars aside each year toward capital projects, because they believe in the need to maintain the infrastructure in the community. People expect to be able to drive on decent roads. People want to use parks that are maintained, that are top flight parks that are maintained to a very high standard of maintenance. They want to drive by roadside landscaping that is well maintained. And so while all of those things may not be as glamorous as building a new vets hall or a new community center, those are the kinds of areas that we're going to be increasingly focusing on in future years, because the same way that we all want to maintain our homes and our property, there's a significant commitment that needs to go toward that if you want to be able to maintain the quality and the character of your community. So as you go through these handouts, what you see again are summaries that show you for 13-14 we're looking at $21.2 million general purpose revenue, about $8 million in special revenue. That ratio of special revenue to general purpose revenue is very much the same year over year as it has been in past years. We're looking at total revenues of just over $30.69 million. Our operating expenditures for the year, just under $27 million. Again, that number has been very, very flat for the last 5 years. We have money that we put aside for what's referred to as asset replacement. That's classified or categorized, I should say, separately. Those are one-time equipment and capital expenditure items, things like paying for software licenses, replacing computers, I believe, in this year's budget. Chief, how many cars, I don't want to lose your attention, how many cars are we buying you in 2013-14? Two, is it? Okay, so I think we might be buying a couple of vehicles for maintenance as well. So we categorize those expenditures separately rather than rolling them into the operating budget, because that number can vary from year to year. We have, for example, a set of vehicle replacement criteria, so we know exactly when we need to replace our fleet of vehicles and how we need to do that. Let's see, what else do I want to make sure that I cover? With respect to the capital improvement program, 39 different projects looking ahead to the upcoming year. The mayor has highlighted some of the ones that are the most significant, I think, and some of these, as he's indicated, have been a long time coming. Pavement management for this year, the town council did appropriate $3 million. That's significant. It's actually $1 million more than the town has been able to appropriate in previous years, and I think it underscores the fact that, well, let's put it this way, we have a city engineer who comes and tells us annually that we've got 154 miles of street and we should be repaving every street in town every 20 years. So those are some fairly lofty standards, and I'm not sure that we're going to be able to reach those lofty standards, but $3 million next year is a really, really good start. The other thing that I think that this handout does is it summarizes for you some of the recently completed projects that the town has accomplished, and a couple of things that I want to highlight, and then I should stop so we can answer questions. You know, one of the things that we're dealing with are some of the hard costs that we have to continue to address that we don't, although we contract and privatize a lot of our service. Let me give you some examples. East Bay Mud, for example, who's our water service provider, their water rates over this past year and the next 2 years are going to increase by 27%. Now, when you're paying a water bill that's well over $1 million a year, and those rates go up 27%, that's a major hit, and it far outstrips the cost of living and growth in revenues. So we just completed the installation of a new central irrigation controller system that links all 5 of our community parks together and is going to give us much better ability to be able to control the amount of water we're putting out, the times of day that we're doing it, adjusting our cycles for rain and so on. So We've been working very hard on that. And then the other project is the solar photovoltaic project, where we've installed solar photovoltaic, I have to say it slowly, arrays at 4 of our town facilities. Now that that is completed, and I think we just flipped the switch 2 weeks ago over at the town offices, we're gonna be saving over $200,000 a year on average over the next 20 to 25 years of our taxpayer money. So we think that that's really, really significant in terms of offsetting this most recent rate increase from PG&E, and using those resources efficiently, and also doing what we need to do to be able to demonstrate some leadership and promote sustainability. So I don't think I'm going to throw any more numbers or facts or figures at you. I'd like to be able to allow a little bit of time for us to take some questions, but please make sure to grab copies of this. It's going to be available. These are hot off the presses this morning. Thank you, Nat. These are going to be available on our website if you'd rather have them electronically. And for those of you who are budget junkies like me, if you'd like to look at the whole 300 pages, because I really love the cover photograph of the Village Theater with the art displayed out in front, you can look at the longer, more complete version with all of the goals and policies and objectives in it as well. So thank you.
Joe, thank you, and Elizabeth, thank you for, when you come on Saturdays, like when we're going to farmers markets, we'll be picking up our materials, you'd see the light downstairs where Elizabeth and the finance group is. It's really an interesting process when you look at how few employees we have in the maintenance department. The maintenance department has, I think, 12, 13 employees. Well, for the miles and miles of parks that we have in the roadside maintenance, it probably takes 60 to 80 people to do that. And as Joe mentioned, we contract that out. So when the economy dropped, we were able to rebid those contracts, take advantage of the fact that budgets were tighter, and as those, they're slowly starting to come back. So we are kind of a unique model, and it sounds like we're just bragging about how great it is. It's actually a model that we had to find. It wasn't just that we were so bright, and we had to find solutions to a difficult and challenging problem, is that our revenue streams here are very unique. And along that road, we discovered some really unique ways to provide high level of services. So really want to thank Elizabeth and her tiny group of people, and particularly Joe for all the leadership for the years that Joe's been here, and of course fellow council members, that we do have a shared value. We have passion. If you were at our council meeting recently, we were just citizens, is to make sure you know that you can report something and do it without having to pick up the phone. We don't want you to go to the website and say, here's how you solve it, by the way, here's the phone number. Well, if you're at the website, let's finish that transaction if you're on your smartphone, so we're going to do that. So let's go. I want to introduce Chief Myers. This is a gentleman who, after let's call it a nationwide search, and I say that sincerely, we happen to live in what is really considered the best fire department, bar none. We have the highest rating, and a rating affects your insurance rates. This fire department has created a standard that's so high, it's at the pinnacle of that, so we in turn get the lowest rates here. Chief comes from a variety of backgrounds, from working in Stockton, Vallejo, actually had experience working in the city as a police officer and a firefighter. So he comes with a person who was on the back of the truck to the front of the truck, who's now in front of the whole team. So it's my pleasure to welcome Chief Paige Myers. Chief, why don't you walk over this way,
Okay,
so
I'll come over here.
Pick up a little bit there. Thank
I
you.
didn't really have anything prepared.
That's
I was
okay.
I was more interested in listening to the budget. So I have somebody else on the hot seat. Did a great job, by the way. Very impressed.
Thank you.
Won't go. I know it's 8:30. I know people have to either get out of town or get to work, so I won't take a lot of your time. But I will say this: a couple things to start with, just because it was on. Nobody asked any questions. I will say, being a part of cities for quite some time, it's very impressive how you presented this. As I look at your projects and how you've outlined the goals that you've achieved, you don't get that everywhere. Take it from me. I know I came from Vallejo, so, you know, it's not apples to apples, I get that. But I've been around Solano County in many communities, so I'm very impressed and a great job. Very much enjoyed your presentation. That being said, a nationwide search, not much competition out there maybe, I don't know. But I'm proud to be here. It's been a warm welcome from everybody, from the mayor, from the city manager, Joe Calabrigo. Everybody has been so nice as I've come through all the communities in the San Ramon Valley. And Danville's been right there at the top, so I've really appreciated that. And I see the same faces all the time. It's like the same people. So I'm not gonna, I don't want to bore you too much because I feel like y'all know me. A lot of you know me already. But I did come from Vallejo. I'll give you my most recent history. I was in Vallejo. The big thing with my background coming to San Ramon Valley is this. I sat on both sides of the table, both labor and management in Vallejo, went through probably one of the most difficult times in municipal history, going through a bankruptcy. And that gave me kind of a unique perspective and how the city services were impacted, how the city was impacted, how emotionally draining that process was, and then doing that from labor side and eventually being on management side and having to figure out ways to fix the problem. Quite frankly, the problem wasn't going to go away, and unless we found out, you know, new ways with some ingenuity and outside the box thinking, we were going to die a horrible death. And I know it's challenging there for them, but we've been able to come out of that. And that experience really, I think, lent itself very well to what we found here in San Ramon Valley, which was a district that had budget issues. 40% reserves, that's amazing. Those of you that know, 40% reserve is a very, very high standard. Coming into San Ramon Valley, we were in a position where we were going to be unable, we were going to have to borrow to make payroll in about 2 years. So coming in the first few months, I'll just tell you, very challenging. I've been here 3 months, and it's all right, I can talk loud. That's like a fire engine, so it's not a big deal. But found some financial issues, some challenges, and right away in the first 60 days, we were able to solve them with the help of our fire board and our labor unions and our non-represented employees. We basically were able to come this year with a balanced budget. And I don't know how many years it's been since we've had a balanced budget, but to have a balanced budget is a big deal. And our labor groups had to give back. Like I said, everybody across the board had to give money, give up money out of their pocket to make us solvent. And 10-year, 5-year projections, we did both. Same type of idea that I had. We looked 10 years out. We really looked at long-term stability. And I'm proud to say that everybody came together in a short amount of time and fixed the problem. I don't want to bore you with budget issues, but I wanted to throw that out there since we were talking about budgets. Very, very good stuff for our folks. A solvent district, a high level of care, as you all already know. And we're proud, I'm proud to be a part of this district and the community. And I'll take questions after because I'm looking at the clock and I'm trying to get as much in as I can. I'll stick around, I'll have a cup of coffee. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer them, and sorry to rush through, but I realize time is
Chief, thank you.
Thank
I just want to add to that, to Matt Stamey, who's the board president. When Matt was running the meeting the other day, when they did an official ceremony where they give the chief his new badge, to see the room full of the firefighters and the head of the fire union there, and the words that were spoken was, I tell you, as a citizen and a taxpayer, you felt pretty good to be in that room. That, as the chief pointed out, in a very short period of time to make a significant change. This wasn't like a few $100s a month. You're talking individuals giving up more than $1,000 a month out of their income to make a long-term health. And we all know that. I mean, you know, we have what we have. But when somebody takes out that kind of a change, it changes your lifestyle. And so really proud to have the leadership at both the board level, the rank and file, and particularly at the chief to be able to accomplish that. So maybe we got just a couple of minutes. Any announcements you want to make from Supervisor Anderson's office?
No, in brevity's sake, just that she's excited to be in the parade.
Yes, 4th of July parade, 9 a.m. By the way, it's on the 4th of July. And how about for Discover Danville? We got some great events coming up.
Oh, we do. And speaking of the 4th of July parade, this year at 9 o'clock, when you all go down to see if your chair is still there, there will be a fan on your chair. This is provided by the Economic Planning and Development component of the town. On the back is instructions to, I'll pass it, you'll need one for your car ride tomorrow. There'll be 5,000 of them. Jill Bergman from part of the town staff produced them in cooperation with Chamber and Discover Danville members, providing prizes to encourage all the participants, all the visitors of the parade to like Danville on Facebook. So we're trying to increase exposure to the town's new communication website so we can get citizens and visitors to our town more aware of the Shop, Dine, Play campaign, and that's where Discover Danville comes in. We're the arm that works with all the small businesses to promote the shopping, dining, revenue generating arm of our small community, as well as all the nonprofits. We create the town calendar that promotes the theater, the Village Theater, which have an opening this Friday night for their new exhibit. We're always promoting them.
Tonight.
And tonight,
Today's
Friday
Friday.
night, we'll be there. And when we go tonight, Discover Danville will be inviting all the artists at the Gallery Theater to come and participate in our Art and Wine Stroll, which is in August. We're the ones at Discover Danville that help try to unite all the different arms and cultural activities in our community. And the big summation of that this summer are the 2 street festivals that we host in conjunction with the town, where every single small business, nonprofit, church, school, fire and police will be out there. Everybody will be packing the streets on 2 Thursday nights, one in July, one in August. We're hoping thousands will come out to play, to dine in the street, and to pick up a strolling map or a goodie bag, a loot bag. We create these too to invite people to come back again for the next event.
Great.
And I know I could talk on for 10 years, but we're
Fantastic.
past our prime.
Thank you guys for everything that you do. These are exciting. So coming up, hot summer nights, concerts at the park at Oak Hill Park, 4 concerts. Friday nights, get your sleeping bag, go out and watch the outdoor, bring your kids. There's popcorn and refreshments. And you can have, it's like the old-fashioned drive-in movie, but it's a walk-in outside movie at the town green. And so let's go to school district first. Bunch of graduations. How did things go? And
Graduations went great. I'd just point out that since we're talking about finances and all, the school board passed our budget on Tuesday nights. Just to give you a sense, town's budget about 30 million. Our budget's about over 230 million.
We represent the school district's utility in scale.
And unfortunately, ours isn't quite finished. We passed our budget on time, but being wards of the state as we are, the governor just signed the state budget yesterday, in the last couple of days. And so now we get to go back and look to see what does that mean from our budget perspective, and we'll probably be back in August making some adjustments. For the first time in a while, though, it looks like the adjustments will be a positive set of adjustments rather than having to make more cuts. We'll probably be able to add some services that we've had to cut in the past. Just one thing I wanted to point out, I want to thank Newell. I was over at Delamigo High School this past weekend. Newell's firm has provided some support for some renovations we're doing in our library at Delamigo, our continuation school. And the Rotary clubs here in the Valley are putting in all of the sweat equity to renovate the inside of that library.
And
So
cash.
we open up.
And $45,000 worth of cash.
And just tremendous effort to help support, because even with that size budget, you know, it really doesn't meet the need that we have from the school district perspective. So the collaborations that we're dependent upon, the support from our community means an awful lot. Our kids wouldn't get the quality of education if we didn't get the kind of community support that we do receive, and things like the Rotary Club stepping in, like I say, sweat equity as well as financial support make a real difference for our kids.
Great, Ken, thank you. Emily, anything from Senator DeSaulniers' office?
Sure. So as Ken mentioned, the governor signed the budget yesterday. There was a signing ceremony. You'll be able to read it online at ebudget.ca.gov if you want to look at it. There's executive summaries also. The senator hosted an a town hall, an informational town hall on the Affordable Care Act last Thursday in Walnut Creek. So that's available on his website. If you're interested in learning more, you can watch it there. And that's sd07.senate.ca.gov.
Good.
Also, he'll be in the parade on the 4th. So we'll see you there, and hopefully we'll get there early enough to get our Discover Danville fans, because it's supposed to be really hot.
Yeah. I'm thinking a little cool, so we'll see how it goes. Gail, how about from Assemblymember Buchanan's office?
Well, like Emlyn said, we have a budget. It's a new day. We've got maybe a little bit of money in the bank, we hope. And we have a different way to fund schools. So that's a pretty amazing difference. That's about it.
Great.
Oh, I just wanted to say, y'all should be very proud of Danville. Danville does a great job of communicating with our office and other, I'm sure your office as well, in terms of legislation that's coming. We represent 9 cities, towns. Nobody does it better than Danville in terms of communicating with us what their opinions are on pieces of
We
legislation.
want to thank
So,
Nat, who's hidden
thank
behind a
you.
camera too, for helping and counseling all of us. So,
Thank you.
well, thank you. I just want to note, this is the beginning of the summer. Have a blast in Danville, whether you have grandkids or children or adults from the senior activities. This is the time that I think Danville shines. We have hundreds of young kids that are working for us over the summer. Next year, if you have a son or a daughter or a grandchild who is looking for a job, in February we start the interview process. Our jobs pay anywhere from $9.50 an hour all the way up to about $18.50 an hour. Great opportunity. It's a good resume that you work for a public agency, and who knows, that maybe you get a letter of recommendation from one of the council members or even the mayor. So have a wonderful summer, and some of us can stick around for a little bit afterwards. So thanks for being here today.
Thank you.